pictures I paint to cry and sing. But I won't let 'em change me. I remain.
Okay. So, it's funny. I remember a couple years back at the start of 2020s when the decade first started, and a lot of people were having this trivia argument about which year actually started the decade. Some people were like, oh, it's 2020. While some people were like, it's 2021. But, in hindsight, I think it's safe to say it was actually the year 2020. Well, here we are. It's 2024. 5 years through the same decade that seems so wildly afar off when I was much younger. It's the month of December, and in classic fashion of looking back or using what you've learned from a previous year to be able to aim forward, I thought we could also, look at the promises, the developments that the year 2025 and the rest of the decade actually kind of has in store for us. And we can make some predictions. Then we could come back a couple years later and see how right or how wrong we were. Alright, so what's the elephant in the room? We have artificial intelligence. This year has been basically just been all about artificial intelligence, tech-wise, really. Let's be honest. We can start with OpenAI. We came to the year with ChatGPT 3.5, which was free to the general public. There was GPT-4, but that was also behind like a paywall. And then over time, we had like releases of GPT-4o, and then there were like other iterations of like o1. Recently, they just announced o3 with their 12 days of Christmas event. Then again, we also had like other chatbots iterations of artificial intelligence from other companies. We had Anthropic, which more or less gave OpenAI a run for their money for a long while. I'd just say for a majority of the year 2024. There was also, Google and all the memes with Gemini and how bad it was to a point. And then now, like for the last 1 month, for some reasons, it just turned on the burners, and it seems like they're going crazy with Gemini and like the different API releases and stuff. Then again, we also had Apple with Apple Intelligence. We know how that went. It's been on Apple's advertising campaigns for like the last 3 months. The iPhone 6 was announced back in October. Apple Intelligence has more or less been a version that has not been what was promised, to be honest. The actual release, the full release, is actually coming to the eligible phones. By the way, if you're using an iPhone 15, you already know that you're not going to get this. It's only from the 15 Pro models and beyond, which is kind of sucks, to be fair. But like Apple's been doing this thing where they more or less use the same chip from previous year in the base models, and then when it comes to the Pro models, they use the new chip for that year. My point is, Apple has not really delivered with Apple Intelligence this year. Not to go on a rant about that. And then we had all the forms of like chatbots from like Perplexity, and then you had the different ones which were like just wrappers of ChatGPT and stuff like that. But it's been a year of chatbots. It's been a year of artificial intelligence. We've also had artificial intelligence hardware, with the Humane AI Pen, with the Rabbit R1, I think. And then there was also the Friend. I don't know if you guys saw Friend on Twitter. It was weird. It was like, I remember Marquez was his response to it was like, "This is not a skit." Like, to be fair, that felt like a skit, like something you'd see as a parody of, I don't know, as a parody of what people imagine artificial intelligence chatbots to be like 5 years down the line, which is what we're considering, So there's that with like AI hardware, and how, like, to be fair, our smartphones are just to do just enough and even more than enough with artificial intelligence, just that they're not just only available for artificial intelligence, which is why AI hardware never really kind of kicked off this year, But with AI, that's pretty much been what we've had so far. So would it be pretty rushy of me, or should I say, would it be pretty like far-reaching of me to be considering the fact that we might get something really close, if not AGI, in the next 5 years? It's very possible. I think particularly with the way like technology kind of evolves, and obviously with artificial intelligence, you have like other uses of it that have kind of outlived the period or the hype of chatbots. Obviously, you have like the AlphaFold with like knowing how protein structures can be made and stuff like that. You also had like the different versions you can kind of use artificial intelligence to map out brains and stuff like that, right? So all these developments, they already exist with artificial intelligence. And I don't think it would be too crazy of an idea to say that we might be getting something very close to AGI in the next 5 years. I'd say 5 years. We can come back to this and we'll see how wrong or how right we were. I'd also just like to touch on something I said back in the summer. I remember when I was talking about how artificial intelligence hardware, like with the Rabbit R1 and the the Human AI Pin, things like that could actually become much more relevant when everyday tasks that involve AI become very niche. Like, so for instance, maybe if it involves just AI with integrated with just telling you the weather. For instance, just hypothetical, right? That kind of situation could maybe more or less justify having an artificial intelligence hardware for that. Maybe, maybe not. But to be fair, it kind of seems very unlikely with how good smartphones are these days. Now, speaking of AI hardware, we got a lot of, or should I say, we got like a good amount of like humanoid robots, like robot developments this year. Obviously in the past we've had like Boston Dynamics, which kind of led the race, and then we got like a good, like a pretty interesting Tesla event, the one with the Tesla robot. I can't really actually remember the name, but we had like the Tesla robot this year, like the announcement for that. I'm guessing there are other non like common like humanoid robots developments that are out there that we are aware of. I'm not so educated in that, but I would like to make a prediction about humanoid robots. In the next 5 years, I like to think that we'd have commercially available humanoid robots serving you and I in our homes, just like you see in the movies. Okay, so aside hardware, let's also go back to the realm of software in some sense. Let's talk about filmmaking and cinema. Obviously, we had a lot of like cinema news this year. There were a lot of good stuff that came out, And one thing, particularly with the advancement and the rising popularity of artificial intelligence in Hollywood, basically, when a lot of cinematography markets was the opposition to using AI for scripts, using AI for videos. I don't know if it was this year. I think it was last year when we had Secret Invasion and the whole like Marvel Studios using AI for the intro, which to be fair, that was so blatant. Like when I'm thinking about it, it's like it wasn't even like they weren't even trying to hide it. It kind of fueled the whole opposition towards AI in filmmaking and cinema, which I think genuinely is going to keep up for the next 5 years. You also had like a bunch of like actors and directors coming out and saying like they would lawyer up against companies or like production companies that would use artificial intelligence to artificially generate content with their likeness or their image. So obviously, yes, there was the one with RDJ where he was talking about how he would sue any production company that tried to use AI to create likeness that he did not agree to. Not even, like, he also mentioned he wasn't going to be condoning anything that involved the use of AI per se in film. So yeah, I think it's going to be one of those industries that would have rules that are largely and strictly averse to the use of AI in the next 5 years. Just like with therapy and intimate services, for instance, like a massage, you wouldn't want a robot like an AI robot or like AI hardware trying to like massage your back or massage your body, right? That's like a service that you want a human to do. So yeah, genuinely, I think that filmmaking and cinema would be one of those very protected industries from artificial intelligence, regardless of whatever development comes along for the next 5 years. It might change after that, but I think for the next 5 years, it's safe to say that industry is going to be well protected from AI. Okay, so enough of the rant about film. Let's go back to strictly technology here. Let's talk about smartphones. Smartphones generally have more or less increased in size. Obviously, we've had like the budget phones getting good over the years, and particularly with the year 2024. But we've also seen a lot of companies go from making the small form factor for a smartphone. They've kind of moved into the large form factor, and you also saw that a lot with like laptops. Like Apple released their like a larger version of the MacBook Air because like why not? Like people kind of love to know that they're using something bigger, even if it doesn't necessarily translate to more quality, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think in the next 5 years, for the rest of the decade, smartphones are going to come back full circle with the form factor and go from like having really big phones, and we more or less will return back to like the enthusiast small sized phones being more and more in the market. Yeah. Another thing I really love you guys to like kind of talk about in the comments is what is going to be the next new form factor for smartphones. Like obviously we start off with just like the regular rectangular glass metal body, which is like what everyone uses, which is still like the mainstream today. And then after that we kind of had like folding phones, like flip phones. You know, we had phones with styluses, and now we even have a trifold like that is commercially available in the year 2024. So it's like, what's gonna be the actual new form factor? What are people gonna, what are companies rather gonna think to themselves? This would be a great form factor that is new and that is fresh for the industry. Okay, so moving on, the platform where you're watching this video on, that I'm speaking to you guys on, YouTube. I don't really have much to say because I think YouTube, the one thing I'd say is like YouTube has, for some reason, keep thinking they need to switch up their UI. I don't know if maybe that leads to spike in like usage numbers whenever they do so, because for some reason the YouTube we have now was not the YouTube we started the year with, which is crazy to think about. And it's not like it was a massive change. It's just weird. And also, you know how YouTube is kind of different from like iPhones versus Android phones to some extent. One thing I would say though is I think YouTube Rewind might end up in the next 5 years being a YouTube like wrapped version for users. I think it would be one of more power to you kind of experience that YouTube would more or less push out. Before we move on from the topic of YouTube, let's talk about YouTube Shorts, because you know, like TikTok being like there's a possibility of it getting banned next year, like next January, I believe. There was also the news that came out a while back about, well, it's not really news anymore, but about like how the government gave like Apple and Google like a notification to be able to take TikTok off their stores, you know. So I think YouTube Shorts might see like a rise, because I think that might be, it might join in. I don't think it will be the sole new meta, because Instagram Reels kind of exists, but yeah, I think YouTube Shorts would definitely see increased usage for sure, and maybe, I don't know, the whole experience could also get better. Also, if you're watching this video, what is your go-to? Like, let's say you just want like a bit of a dopamine boost, or you want to just scroll through like short form content, for instance. What is your go-to? Is it YouTube Shorts or is it Instagram Reels? Alright, so at this point in the video, let's just make some general predictions. As I not so slightly hinted at, Apple has a lot of catching up to do AI-wise. I think particularly with how Google just kind of boomed in the last like 2 weeks, or 2 weeks to a month with Gemini. I think they have a lot of catching up to do. OpenAI keeps being OpenAI, and then there's Anthropic, you know, which is kind of rising. But like with Google, it's like they have their own phones that can be largely integrated with Gemini. Although, what's happening with Google Assistant? Anyway, my point is, Apple Intelligence has a lot of work to do. Also, it's kind of funny and ironic that part of Apple Intelligence power comes from being able to work with ChatGPT that belongs to OpenAI. So a general prediction would be, I don't think Apple is gonna be one of the big boys when it comes to artificial intelligence. Another prediction I want to make is, I think we're going to settle on a form factor that is between a headset and glasses. And I think in terms of the technology for that form factor, it's going to be a middle ground between virtual reality, as we have with like the Oculus headsets, and with the the Meta Quest, those headsets, and then I think versus augmented reality, like AR, which we have with like Apple, the Vision Pro, and also Google might be making a comeback with the Google Glass. It'd be so great if they brought it back, because that was so that was so and way ahead of its time. So it'd be kind of nice if like Google kind of brought it back and then integrated like the Gemini with it, and then I don't know, maybe they might scrap Google Assistant or like just merge Gemini and Google Assistant together into the glasses and just make it one large powerhouse. But that's like the prediction I have. A middle ground between virtual reality and augmented reality, in the middle ground, in the form factor of a middle ground, or in the middle ground of a form factor, or in a form factor that is between a headset and glasses. I don't know how that's going to look. Lastly, one of the big tech companies should make printers. Like, I mean, one of the big tech companies like Apple and Samsung, like, and even Google, like, it's not going to be, it's going to be kind of out of their niche, but like, it's not a bad idea. Like, y'all make printers. Like, y'all should make printers. I think you should make like a generally commercially available printer that, like, just like how people were like, oh, I have an iPhone and I have a Pixel, I have like a Samsung, like a, you know, like an Android phone. Obviously there are other companies out there, but I think like Google, one of those three companies, should make a printer for everyone. This is less of a prediction and just more of a request. Yeah, make a printer. And I know you might think to yourself like, that's largely irrelevant, it's a waste of resources, and like everything's getting digital and everything's getting digitized now, which is true. But if maybe, I don't know, like this year, try and think back on how many times you thought you could just use like a soft copy of whatever document or whatever piece of information you had with you was requested of you, but you actually needed a hard copy. Like a lot of people, in a lot of places in the world, we still kind of need those hard copy documents. So like, and files. So like, yeah, like a printer from like a commercially successful printer for everyone isn't a really bad idea, is it? Okay, so for the last section of this video, I just want to give you guys like a bit of a heads up on content from this channel. I think to be able to get more videos out there going forward, I'm going to be documenting a lot of my experiences with tech, as opposed to just making like a full-on review about the product. So like, I don't know, like a while back, if you follow the channel for some time now, I remember I had like a video where I documented my experience on what it's like to use a PS5 controller without a PS5, like live with the controller without the PS5. And that was like 2 years after the PS5 had more or less come out. And that's like a prime example of what I think I'm gonna be doing. Obviously content would be improved from then, but yeah, just a heads up. And as you may remember, the channel is supposed to be one that covers technology, Christianity, education, sports sometimes, you know? Like, I support the Celtics, and I think I have some thoughts. Yeah, that's like an example of like things I want to start doing on the channel more. I hope you guys like this little, you know, more or less like rant for the end of the year, and I'll see y'all in the new year. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll catch y'all in the next video. Peace.